If you are thinking about lime washing your house, this video is going to be a lifesaver. When I was researching the process, I swear I read every tutorial and every video on the internet. Then in the middle of the project, there were still so many things that nobody talked about. This video and my guides are meant to help you do this project with way less stress and make sure it turns out exactly the way that you want it to. Of course, I am going to cover the supplies, the prep, the steps to apply it, and most importantly, I'm going to tell you the tips that no one ever talks about, my mistakes, and how you can make sure that your lime wash turns out exactly the way that you want it. Plus, I also have a full blog post linked below that shows you a variety of finishes using lime wash, so you can see those examples and more accurately decide what you want your house to look like. I also have a free printable one-page guide with these steps and the tips summed up to help you through the process, so you can just have that with you as you go. So make sure you download that. And if you watch this video and think, why does she randomly look different and is in a different place? You're not crazy. It's okay. I'm just new to creating YouTube content. And since this is a topic where details are so important, I've had to re-record some spots to include important details. Okay, let's get into it. First supply is Limewash. I used Remabio Limewash in Avoria White. You'll need a mixer drill attachment to mix the Limewash throughout the project. I used the same mixer attachment that I used for an epoxy countertop project, which is a video that you will see soon, and it really wasn't the right kind. It basically did the job, but it took much longer and was much less effective, so I would definitely buy the right kind of attachment, which is linked below. You will need a hose to spray the areas right before you Limewash. You also should get a pressure washer and clean the brick before you apply this. I may or may not have done this perfectly, so is this a deal breaker? I don't think so, but I would definitely recommend doing it. You should also have some buckets for diluting because technically it's not recommended to add water directly to the Limewash bucket. Now, for the sponges and cloths, this really just depends on the look you want and the method you find to get that during the testing phase, which we'll talk about. But you can try a huge variety of materials for distressing your brick, like different size of sponges, rags. I saw someone online using what looked like a toilet brush. I'm sure it wasn't a toilet brush, but that texture. I even saw one cool video on Pinterest where some guy was using the air from, I think, a airless paint sprayer to wear off the finish. So just tons of options. I have details about all of that in my distressing guide, which is in the Limewash ebook, which is the best resource that you're going to find on lime washing. So make sure you check that out. Finally, really the most important items for the application are either a masonry brush or a paint sprayer. I am creating a whole video on the difference between these two, so watch for that video and make sure you hit subscribe if you're trying to figure out the best way for you to apply it. Regardless of which method you choose, you need to make sure to get the right masonry brush or the right paint sprayer. Basically, not the cheapest brush or sprayer available. I got the cheapest brush because I was like, what's $3 extra going to do? It's going to do a lot. The bristles basically just fell out the entire time. It was not worth it, I promise. Spend a couple extra dollars on a good masonry brush like the Marshalltown brand I have linked below, and choose a paint sprayer that either doesn't get clogged easily or is easy to clean repeatedly. Now you have the supplies, let's get into the prep. As I mentioned before, it is highly suggested to pressure wash your brick before you apply the lime wash. But did I pressure wash my house? Well, I thought I did. I had bought a pressure washer from Facebook Marketplace, and I used that. And I did that on my whole house. I realized later it really didn't work at all and was leaking from like every possible place. So ultimately, I really just hosed the house down. I still recommend pressure washing your brick because that's really the only way to get it clean to apply the lime wash. But also, if you don't do it, well, I didn't say anything about it. Okay, now Remabio specifically says to apply the lime wash between 50 and 90 degrees Fahrenheit. It also specifies that rain will not affect the application after about 3 to 4 hours. But of course, you should do your best to plan for a time when rain isn't in the forecast for the next day. Fun story. I did plan this well. And of course, it still downpoured the next morning. Like, not a little rain, a downpour. However, the lime wash was totally fine. So pro for Remabio lime wash. Another lesson I learned about the prep actually came from my experience after I finished lime washing, because I just looked around and laughed and cried because the house, the ground, the air, myself, it was all completely covered in lime wash. Really, no matter what consistency you use of lime wash, which we'll talk about, it's going to be very watery and splatter central. So you just need to prepare for that. But what I discovered is that Limewash is very easy to clean right away, but it's a little hard to perfectly hose off the ground beside your house without also washing off the Limewash on the bottom of your brick. And once you wait about 24 hours, the Limewash is very difficult to clean off of brick or cement. I saw someone on Instagram use cardboard to cover the ground, and it looked like he basically had no mess to clean up afterwards. However, that's the internet. You never know what to believe. Overall, just consider how you want to cover the ground. It's going to be messy. Okay, important tips. This might seem like a weird time of the video to talk about tips, but there were a few things I didn't see anyone talking about, and they completely affected the process and the way my Limewash turned out. So these are the tips I'm going to cover real quick. Picking the right Limewash color. For the love of God, test the Limewash first and let it dry and test it. Also, treat mixing like an art, not a science. Checking your grout lines, and don't start at the front of your house. Okay, first, pick the right Limewash color. As I mentioned, I used Avoria White, which is the most white of the colors. In the end, because of the application techniques that we're about to discuss and my mistakes, it ends up being more stark white than I wanted. It's not bad by any means, but this just wasn't the look I was going for. Okay, now for my absolute most important tip of this entire video. It's practice. Limewashing is a little different than painting because you can use some different techniques to get a different look. And if you're not extremely artsy like me, this can be a challenge. You can see that I did a test area on my house, but I did not mess around nearly enough. I just kind of got it up there and I wasn't confident at all. And on the day I was finally ready to do my whole house, which is a big deal with kids and stuff, I just half-assed it and covered the house with brick without any distressing or really adjusting it because I hadn't figured it out beforehand. But every little thing you do in the application affects the way Limewash looks in the end. And if you're doing a full brick house, that really adds up. So this was by far my biggest mistake. So here are the things you need to pay attention to when you're deciding on your Limewash technique. First, you need to decide what you actually want it to look like. It can be opaque, don't know how to say that, transparent, or kind of an in-between, or worn in some places. Also think about how much to dilute your Limewash because a little bit of water makes a big difference. If you want to distress it and how much, figure out what technique gets the distressing you want. So a rag, a sponge, a spray bottle, hose, whatever. And check the depth of your grout and how you're going to cover those cracks. So what do you want your finish to look like? Deciding how opaque or transparent you want it to be will affect how much you dilute it. To see some examples of Limewash houses, I have a whole blog post that I will link below. And then adjusting the finish can include a couple of these things. So it can be doing nothing for an opaque flat finish, which is essentially what I kind of accidentally ended up doing. It can be just dressing small areas with like a sponge or cloth or spray bottle. It can be lightly rinsing the Limewash so it's pretty transparent, or it can be any combination of those things. Basically, once you have a more specific and more clear idea of what you want, you can more easily figure out how much to dilute the Limewash and how to distress it. Okay, back to the main tips. The Limewash is meant to be diluted. That was weird. In fact, I had read a guide that said to dilute it 70%. And I tried that, and it actually works. It's just extremely messy, like everything, but that's just the nature of limewashing. And the more you dilute your Limewash, the more transparent the finish will be. At the same time, keep in mind that Limewash dries more opaque than it goes on. So test it out while it's wet, mess with it, but let it dry for an hour or two so you can see what it's actually going to look like. The most important thing is to just keep practicing, keep trying new things until you are sure you know you're getting the look that you want. It may be annoying because it might take an extra day or two, but I promise this is going to make all the difference in the end result. Okay, so here's what I mean by treat mixing like an art and not a science. When I was doing all my research on Limewash, nobody talked about this. But while you are limewashing, the water you added to your Limewash is going to slowly evaporate, or not so slowly evaporate. And that changes the consistency of the Limewash. So you'll have to continually add water to your Limewash just to keep it a similar consistency. This was really confusing because I would apply one section and then the next section would look different as soon as I was applying it. So it took me a minute to figure that out. So this is why it's going to help to practice, is to understand what kind of consistency you need to get the look you want. But don't make it like it has to be 71% exactly, because it's just naturally going to change. So you have to just kind of keep up with it. Keep it relatively consistent, but not exact because that will drive you crazy. Finally, pay attention to your grout lines. Some brick houses have grout that is essentially level with the brick, so in that case, you really don't have to worry about anything. But my brick happened to have really deep grout lines, and this is something I didn't notice till an entire side of the house was done. And it was at this point, an hour or so deep, with toddlers running around wanting snacks and 3/4 of the project still left to go, that I looked at my progress on this side of the house and absolutely hated it. Do you know how frustrating and discouraging that is? I would like to say that this is the first time I experienced that, but it was neither the first time or the last. However, I regret nothing because making these mistakes and having those moments in the projects is what has allowed me to help many people with their home projects. Because if I didn't make the mistakes and if this all just went perfectly, I wouldn't even know half of these things. So it's all for the best. Anyway, a final tip that I almost forgot, and it's just not to start at the front of your house, and more accurately, really just don't start at the most visible spots on your house. This is one of the few things I got right. And thank God, because the first 2 sides of my house did not go well and gave me so many learning curves. It wasn't until the 3rd and 4th sides, which were thankfully the front of the house, that I actually got a technique and a finish that I liked. Okay, now you have all the information you need. Let's get to the actual application. The steps to apply Limewash are to add water to the Limewash, mix the Limewash, spray your brick section with water, apply the Limewash with a masonry brush or a paint sprayer, and then use the technique that you already practiced and decided on to adjust the finish. I think you'll see that once you've used all the tips I've already given you and you're at this point in the video, the application is actually going to be the easy part. Remember to just do one section of brick at a time, finish that, and then move on to the next section. And that's really it. Now, when you're done applying the Limewash, you'll want to think about cleanup. Remember that the Limewash will hose right off in the first few hours, but after a day, it will become a whole lot more difficult. For this reason, after you finish maybe like half your house or just a whole section, I would recommend walking around your house and just making sure it's getting the look that you want. The first couple hours is when you can still make adjustments and change things. After even a day or so, sometimes less, the Limewash becomes really like a new surface, and it's basically impossible at that point to clean it off of certain surfaces, mainly like brick and cement. It shouldn't be hard to clean off of windows and metal door frames, really ever. I did get lucky and I was able to scrub some Limewash off of a stone that was near my house like a week or 2 after doing the Limewash with like just a really good scrub brush for like floors or grout or tile. But I definitely think that's the exception, not the rule, because I have some other spots that were definitely not so lucky. You can see those right here by my feet. And that's it. With your house Limewash, it's going to feel like a brand new house. Even with my many mistakes and the result really not turning out how I wanted it to, the Limewash gave my house an incredible transformation. I also didn't talk about all the benefits of limewashing your brick, especially when you compare it to painting. But ultimately, once you're done with this project, you can enjoy the Limewash for decades without ongoing maintenance. Also, because Limewash is a natural material made of natural things, it's designed to age naturally or patina over time. This is especially good for the spots that I missed that you hopefully will not miss, because those spots of Limewash that won't wash off the cement will probably naturally fade at some point. Who knows when? And there's proof of this because you can see in the photos of my house, the front porch faded very quickly, and I kind of loved it. Don't forget to get the free printable version of this guide so you can just have that on hand. And if you really want the best chance of getting your house exactly right, get the currently very affordably priced Limewash ebook. I truly poured my heart into this, and I spent hours going over all my notes, the pictures, testing things, and gathering details so that you could be super informed and confident and give your house the ultimate makeover without the stress that I experienced. I hope this video was helpful and made you feel like you can actually do this. And please subscribe so I can keep on making these and continue to be the person online you can really trust to give you the real deal behind projects, including the inevitable mistakes that we're all going to make. And if you follow my tips and Limewash your house, I would love to see the before and after and tell you how amazing it looks. Just reach out to me on TikTok or Instagram or email or my website, lots of places. Have fun!